Now then, tonight, for the first time since 1983, Aston Villa play a European Cup, or of course, as it's now known, Champions League quarter-final with their first leg away to Paris Saint-Germain. Unai Emery, excited to take on his former club.
The recognition of Aston Villa is massive. And when I arrived here, Aston Villa 2 years and a half ago, I knew this history. Of course, my challenge was in that moment to be contender for trophies, to play Europe again, and in case like we are doing now to play Champions League was really amazing. To keep it consistency is my next challenges. To be playing in Paris Champions League quarter final is something really special and amazing for everybody we are involved in Aston Villa, but something we want to be consistency doing it.
See, the thing that you know about Unai Emery is no matter how calm, humble, unassuming he is, he's always got a plan. This man will have a plan for this tie, even though it might look a little, not one-sided, but imbalanced a little bit, because PSG, of course, have all the talent and they have the reputation in recent years. Dougie, is this a free hit for Villa, would you say?
Well, it's their first campaign in the Champions League since its rebrand. It's the first campaign in the European Cup since 1983, and I don't think anyone expects them to get to this stage. But after the run they've had, beating Bayern Munich, beating Bologna, great result against Celtic, sort of easing past Club Brugge, although there were some challenges in that tie, but they eventually got through fairly comfortably in the end. I think this is an amazing opportunity. But as we said, Unai Emery doesn't have a great record against Luis Enrique. He's won 2 of 10 games. Villa are yet to win on French soil. Their away record in the Premier League this year isn't great. They've lost 7 of their 15 games. So I think most people do expect this to be fairly one-sided, PSG to go through, which kind of frees up Villa to actually just have a go at this as well as possible. And we've seen a number of their players that they've arrived in January, or players that they've had for a lot longer as well, really start to click into gear in the last few weeks as well. So I think they can go in with a certain degree of freedom and confidence.
And freedom and confidence also because they've got momentum. You know, they are in form. Although, admittedly, also, Pete, PSG are in form. So who's better form in form at the moment?
Yeah, PSG is certainly going OK, as you'd say. Their run of form, I think, has stretched back further. We know how dominant they can be in Ligue 1. They wrapped up the Ligue 1 title at the weekend by beating Angers. So they're on for an invincible season in France, and they've won 21 of their last 23 here. Just that one loss against Reims in the French League. And the draw there as well. So, look, very strong team, PSG. We saw that up close and personal when Liverpool really struggled, didn't they, in Paris in that game. They, of course, came away with a victory in that game, but definitely struggled in that match, and we saw their attacking flair. But look, Villa go with excitement, I think, to Paris, because their last 7 games in all competitions, win, all the way through, and big, important games as well. You look at, say, the Club Brugge Champions League game, where they had to get through the playoff there against them. The cup games, they were into a semi-final of the FA Cup against Crystal Palace. Their league form has turned up in such a way that they could qualify again for Europe through the league. It looks like it could be a really fantastic end of the season for Emery and Aston Villa after a patch perhaps in October, November time where they were maybe got a bit stuck in the mud and struggled a little bit. But as Dougie says, those January arrivals just seem to have replenished them, re-energised them. And as I say, they go to Paris full of excitement.
And Dougie mentioned the historic nature of this tie, particularly in the quarter-finals of Europe's top club competition. So I'm guessing that there won't be many Villa players who've experienced anything like this. However, there is one player in Villa colours who has, and that's Marcus Rashford. So how significant could he be?
Yeah, certainly Marcus Rashford is one of those players who has lifted them. And we can see against PSG, he's got a decent record as well, 3 goals and an assist against them, of course, most famously in that 2019 game for Man United when they turned around a first leg deficit against PSG in the Champions League knockouts. He scored an injury time penalty, really held his nerve, and a fantastic moment for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Man United back then. That took Man United into the quarterfinals. That's actually his only experience in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. They lost 4-0 to Barcelona across 2 legs there. So despite being 27, despite winning both domestic cups a couple of times, winning the Europa League, maybe a little bit of new territory for him as well. But Marco Asensio, I would say as well, is maybe another player that Villa players would be looking to as what does he do on a match day, a big game, what's his temperament like in these fixtures? Of course, a 3-time Champions League winner with Real Madrid. So Villa, Yeah, you're right. The bulk of the group don't have that experience on big European nights, but a few of their key players do.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about Marco Asensio. So there's this phrase in Spanish which is cláusula de miedo. It means fear clause. It's essentially when you can play against your parent club and you fear the impact of that returning player. That's why they call it that. Sometimes you get the situation in England where that's not possible. You know, that loanee is ineligible. But it's not the case with Marco Asensio. It's quite an odd situation for him, isn't it?
It really is. And Unai Emery will be absolutely delighted that he's available because he scored 8 goals in 11 games for Aston Villa since joining. He only ever scored 7 in 47 for Luis Enrique across 18 months there. So he's already outperformed his numbers at PSG, and you can see the benefit of him feeling very involved in this project. At PSG, he was competing with Colomwani, Gonzalo Ramos, 2 players that never really got a look in as central strikers. Ousmane Dembele was then moved centrally. They signed Kavisha Kvaratskhelia in January, so it did feel like the time to move him on. But for Aston Villa, having a player that has scored 15 Champions League goals across his entire career, won 3 Champions Leagues, as Pete points out, has so much experience playing for Real Madrid and PSG, will stand them in very good stead.
Yeah. And talk about some of the key players on both sides. So, Pete, as far as PSG are concerned, who are we talking about?
Well, I think Dembele is a good place to start, isn't he? Having the most incredible scoring season of his career. 24 goals in 20 games in all competitions for PSG in 2025. He's actually come on as a sub in the last couple of games, so he's on a 2-goal drought. This is like unheard of him. Unheard for him this season. Yeah, he wouldn't be happy with that. The stats not quite so good as they were a couple of games ago. But no, he's been absolutely fantastic. He's actually surpassed his total for the past 5 seasons by 4 goals already this season. 32 in total this season for him, which just shows how he's stepped up and really taken on that leadership role in that front line. A lot of young players in this PSG team, but with Mbappe going, he's had a few more opportunities through the middle. And he's really revelled in it. And we saw him bundle one in against Liverpool, didn't he? That was the decisive goal at Anfield, which ultimately took the game to penalties, which PSG won. And although it wasn't his most fantastic strike, I think just a reminder that he is now getting himself into these positions where he is making the difference.
Yeah, it's that growing maturity, isn't it, as a player after, obviously that huge move, Dortmund to Barcelona, now PSG, and really showing his qualities. What about for Aston Villa, Ziggy? Who are they going to be relying on to try and get what would be a memorable result tonight?
Well, Marco Asensio's got 3 goals for them in 71 Champions League minutes, so he's probably a good place to start. But also Morgan Rogers. I think Morgan Rogers has had a phenomenal campaign. He's already in double figures for goals and assists in all competitions. And I think there'd be more excitement about a player of this quality if it wasn't for so many players in that position coming through that are English, the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White and Cole Palmer, etc. But he's taken to the Champions League so easily. That hat-trick against Celtic was really impressive, also contributed very heavily against Club Brugge. And across the Premier League this season, across the Champions League this season, he's taken the most shots, he's created the most chances in the Aston Villa squad and completed 3 times as many dribbles. And in a game where you expect PSG to have maybe over 65% possession, his ability to break up the pitch and break through lines with his dynamic play will be absolutely crucial.
Yeah, not just for the offensive threat, but also just giving his players a little bit of a rest of that sort of pressure, both physically and psychologically, that PSG are sure to exert this evening. What about playmakers on both sides, Pete?
Yeah, I think obviously we're talking about exciting attackers, but actually both these managers love to get control of the ball and control of the game. And I think that's where Tielemans and Vitinha come in. And we can look at their stats here compared with each other in the Champions League this season. But let's start with Tielemans, because my colleague Adam Bates has written a nice piece on the website about how he is the player who's made the most passes under pressure in the Premier League, studying that statistic, and also how he passes forwards at almost every opportunity. And he got his first assist of 2025 against Nottingham Forest at the weekend for Villa. So he's a player, I think, who on big occasions steps up. I'm thinking about the FA Cup final for Leicester, of course, as well. But I think he's going to be very important for Villa if they're going to get control of this game in Paris. But it's very difficult against this man, because we can see, well, club ranks first for passes, but he actually ranks 3rd across all the players in the Champions League this season for passes made. And Vitinha, across the past 3 seasons for PSG, just sitting there, controlling the tempo for them. And he's such a key figure for Luis Enrique. Can you believe at the end of his loan season with Wolves, they had the option to buy him, 20 million euros, turned that down. A season later, PSG come in, 40 million euros they pay Porto for him, and he's been a key figure in Paris.
That now seems like real value, doesn't it? It's just the way it goes. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. OK, we're running out of time, but Dougie, what do you think Unai Emery and Aston Villa would take tonight as a satisfactory outcome from the first leg? Parity, or would they take a narrow defeat? What do you think?
I think parity is what they'll be looking for sure. I mean, this is a guy that's won 4 Europa Leagues. He's taken Villarreal to the Champions League semi-finals back in 2022. He is probably the reason that Aston Villa fans are most confident going into this tie. And I think they're being fairly realistic, realising that PSG, having lost one of their last 29 games going back to October, they are the massive, massive underdogs. But with Morgan Rogers' form, with Asensio, with Rashford's arrival, Ollie Watkins having created 4 goals so far in the Champions League this year, more underrated players like Luca Digne having excellent years as well. Emi Martinez has always performed really well in big games as well. So I think they can go in with a little bit of confidence.